Ryan, it's fantastic to have you here today, and really appreciate
Welcome, mate.
your time late in the evening in Australia, early in the morning in the US, and the middle of the day in France. So here we are covering the entire world.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, no, it's a pleasure, mate. And so obviously, we're just going to be chatting with Ryan today. Mark's going to introduce us. Mark knows him well, and we'll go from there. All right, over to you, Mark.
Okay, fantastic, Ryan. Also, welcome. For all our friends and viewers out there, Ryan Norris is a startup founder based in Australia, doing some pretty interesting IoT and related activities, mainly in the mining sector. You're a mining engineer, aren't you? That's your trade.
Yeah, mechanical conveyor engineer.
Mechanical, yeah. And you'd started some work in the corporate end, and then decided that it was time to start your own business. So we're looking forward to hearing the story.
Yeah, great. Well, again, thanks for having me. And I guess if you'd like me to launch into it, I can probably just start at the beginning and sort of give you the life flashes before your eyes kind of snippets as we go through. But yeah,
please do.
Yeah, so essentially, like you said, Mark, I was working as a graduate conveyor engineer here in Mackay for the mining organisations that are, as we say, over the hill. So yeah, Anglo-Americans and BHPs and whatnot. And
we probably should just explain to the worldwide audience, Mackay is a small regional city in Queensland, Australia, on the Great Barrier Reef. Happens to be about one of the largest coal mining sectors of the world, with all the major internationals. So, if you start dropping names, it's because they're all business people around the corner.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. But yeah, Mackay's got quite a dichotomy going on. It's got industry and a lot of that heavy industry, and they call it metal mashing. So there's a lot of welding and all that kind of thing happening, and then the coal mining and whatnot and all the related services for that. But then at the same time, we've got the beautiful reef and the tourism and the islands and the Whitsundays, which I like to refer to as Australia's Caribbean. So it's an interesting place, and I love it because you get the best of almost every world here at Mackay. So so just going back to who I was before Vayeron, and then essentially how Vayeron came about, then I'll talk to you exactly what Vayeron does. But I was working as a graduate, fresh out of uni, mechanical engineer for a conveyor consulting business, and we were doing a lot of work for the mining clients, blue chip miners that operate mines all around the world. But a lot of that work as the graduate was the grunt work and the not so pleasant work, and spending time on the conveyors, getting dirty, really getting to know conveyors intimately, because you're basically you're the guy that they send to go and walk up to 10, 12 kilometers a day looking for broken bits of pieces, writing reports on that, making recommendations on where improvements on efficiency can be made. And during the course of that, obviously you get good exposure on why conveyors break. And for anybody that's not really familiar with the conveyor system, it's generally considered the artery of a mining operation, or actually just a bulk materials handling operation. So that's any kind of operation where you're moving a lot of material from point A to point B, and you need to get it there quickly, and generally it's in very high volumes. So mining ticks all those boxes, and because it's such high volumes, these arteries of the operation, when they break, it really hurts the profitability of the operations that use conveyors. So efficiency is key. Doing everything in a way where you're basically utilizing your equipment, and you're talking conveyors are multi-million-dollar bits of gear. So you want to be utilizing it all the time to its maximum.
And when they break down, they cause a complete stoppage, don't they? When the conveyor stops moving stuff.
Complete stoppage of the artery operation. And if you think about it, if your aorta stops pumping blood, your body, your operation stops. So it's kind of like that, but just less fatal. But So, you know, during that time, a big part of my job was actually inspecting conveyors for roller failure. And these rollers are actually things that support the conveyor belt. They're quite from an outsider's perspective, a benign conveyor component. They, you know, you get attracted to all the, as a mechanical engineer, all the sexy gear like your gearboxes and drives and all that kind of stuff. And conveyor rollers are just these things which support the belt, and everything rolls on top of them. That's right. But what we found was their performance and their reliability was the single most important aspect to the efficiency of that conveyor system. And it was death by 1,000 cuts. A lot of these operations were having these rollers fail and causing 15 minutes of downtime there, 30 minutes over there. In some cases, it might be a couple of hours for some real bad failure where they needed to bring in equipment to change the roller. But we're only talking like, you know, a Coke can on a stick, really, that is treated as a consumable. But it's the sheer quantity of them, and the fact that to maintain the sheer number of rollers in a conveyor system is quite a laborious task. And humans, obviously, you know, don't stay on top of it. But what they've done is they've just treated the maintenance of conveyor rollers as cost of doing business, because there was no better way to actually maintain these things. Sheer quantity, the fact that they fail in between inspections are laborious, and you just can't predict when they're going to fail. So this all adds up to being the primary cause of why conveyor systems go down in a mining operation.
Hey Brian, how many rollers and how long are the conveyor belts on an average size mine site that you started doing work on?
Yeah, so an average size mine site could have up to, you know, 13, 15, upwards of 20 kilometers of conveyor system on their mine. And in Australia, in aggregate, there's about 11,000 kilometers of conveyor system in our sort of target market.
11,000 kilometers of conveyor belts.
That's right. In one country. So globally, obviously, it's huge, and there's about 20 million conveyor rollers in operation here in Australia. And
20 million.
That's right. And keep in mind, these things are a consumable. They people expect them to fail, and they expect to change them out. But what they're also doing while they're failing is they're starting fires. They're tearing up the conveyor belt, which from a dollar perspective is the most expensive thing you sort of outlay when you build your conveyor system. And I was working for one mine where a $20 million belt was scrapped, completely written off after 4 years, because all the rollers underneath it were kind of breaking up and cutting into the belt, and eventually they destroyed the structural integrity of the belt, and they had to scrap it. So that's the problem and the cost associated with the problem. So, after a few of these shifts walking these conveyors underground, and underground coal mines aren't very pleasant places to be, very restricted access, dark, wet, grimy. I spent more time looking at my feet than I did at the conveyor, just so I didn't fall over and fall into the conveyor. And, I really got the shits with it, to be honest. And I thought, and it's a bit cliche, but I did think to myself, there must be a better way. And so as an engineer, what I ended up doing is conceptualizing a widget, which would essentially go inside these rollers and monitor the rollers for me, so I didn't have to walk these belts. And I knew it had to be rugged and robust and need to be able to last the life of a roller. Once it's in a roller, you can't access it. So batteries might be a problem, because there's maintenance around batteries and life expectancy, limitations with batteries. So I had this punch list of like must-haves with this product, and knowing what it would need to be a suitable product for the kind of problem that we were solving. And I ended up, lo and behold, just through, I guess, serendipity, meeting my co-founder, Paul Matsouris, who has an electronics design consultancy. And I was basically tendering it out for assistance on development of this product. And I approached a number of firms, and Paul's firm was one of them. And I didn't hear back from a lot, but I heard back from not Paul, but someone within his business who basically gave me a quote. And I said, "Well, guys, I'm just a graduate engineer on less than $50,000 a year. I can't afford this. It was I almost fell off my chair. So I said, I'm going to have to put this on ice and come back to it another time. I mean, I just can't see this is not fathomable. I can't afford this. So anyways, I left it at that and went on with my engineering life, walking belts. And about 3 weeks later, I got a call from Paul himself, and he said, Ryan, I've seen your proposal. For one, I haven't seen many engineering product specs presented to me like the way you've presented yours. So I can tell you're an engineer. So I said, yep, you've got that right. And he goes, it seems like you really know the problem. And it seems like you really know the value of the problem you're solving. And I said, well, I guess so, but and he said, look, are you going to do the project? And I said, probably not, because, I'm just a graduate and I think this is just outrageously expensive. And he said, look, I get a lot of product development ideas come across my desk every day. And a lot of them are written to me on napkins, and they for just unrealistic things like, can you chuck a GPS inside whatever. And just some development concept which is not feasible. And this is one of the very few that is feasible, and I really think should see the light of day. So he said, look, I'll do you a deal. Let's develop this together. We'll start a business around it, and we'll take it as far as we can take it. And he said, what can you afford? And I gave him a figure, and I said, I'll sell my boat. I'll go to mum and dad. I'll get a loan. I maxed out a credit card as well on top of the loan. And basically I said, I can afford that. And that's what I did to be able to afford that. And he said, look, I'll do 50, I'll subsidize all my rates, and I'll cover all the overhead of this, and we'll take it as far as we can. We did that. We went off together and took about 18 months to develop our first prototype. And the funny thing is, we were going to take our first prototype and present it to roller manufacturers, because the idea was that this product, and I'll just give you an idea what the product was. It's a sensor which monitors the condition of the roller and predicts failure, and it monitors various aspects of the roller, temperature, vibration, and whatnot, and wirelessly sends it back to base for maintenance reporting. So at the time, we're going back to 2013 here, Internet of Things wasn't really a concept that was widely spoken about, or even a buzzword in popular lexicon just yet.
Certainly not in Mackay either,
Yeah, well, that's right. Definitely not Mackay. And look, and that's essentially what it was. It was Internet of Things. So we were almost on this wave was coming up behind us, and we just happened to be in the right kind of trendy place at the right kind of time, because what happened was the idea was to sell this product to conveyor roller manufacturers, and they would buy it off us and put it in their products and create a value-added enhanced roller offering. And we knew that the conveyor roller manufacturers already got the networks, the distribution chains, and the customers. They sell the rollers to the conveyor operators anyway. So let's just put our product in their products and go to market with them.
Yeah.
So we built this prototype, and I saw a video of it, because Paul was in Sydney at the time. I was in Mackay, and he sent me up a video. And he says, look, it's working. And they did some tests and stuff. And I was like, that's great. I'm going to fly down to Sydney, and I'll meet up with you, and we'll go and have a meeting with a conveyor manufacturer. Yeah. And he said, okay, great. So we arranged so I went down to Sydney. I collected Paul. We jumped on a plane. We flew to WA, and the conveyor manufacturers in WA.
And Western Australia. Just remembering some of the size of this for people. Sydney is about 2,000 kilometres south of Mackay. It's a couple of hours on the plane, and you were going to fly about 6,000 kilometres to the other side of the country.
For us uneducated Americans, it's New York to LA.
Yeah, basically. And look, I guess this is my first real experience of the startup ups and downs, because we get to WA, Western Australia, the other side of the country, a 4-hour, 5-hour flight. And our meeting with the conveyor company was the next day, and it was our big pitch. This is going to be our first customer. They had already, over email and phone conversations and whatnot, agreed that this was going to be a great next big thing for them. And so we get over there, and we're at the hotel, and we're just getting prepped, for the next day. And we had disassembled the prototype for transport. We were reassembling it, And I said to Paul, well, you know, in all the rush and getting over here, you actually haven't shown me live in person this prototype operating.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, it was all over video sort of thing. So he goes, yeah, no, that's a great idea. Let's do a run through.
Oh,
So we assemble
live demo of a prototype. Oh,
Yeah.
big cool.
Yeah. So we assembled this prototype and we put it inside a roller which we had procured, and it was all kind of like, you know, a bit handmade type thing. We're putting it in there. There's some 3D printed components and stuff like that, and some a prototype PCB and whatnot. And we put it in there, and he we had made this little jig to spin the roller, because the idea is that there's no batteries, that energy harvests from the rotation. That's how it powers itself. So obviously, in order to demonstrate the technology, you've got to spin a roller. So he spins up this roller, and we just hear this crunching.
No.
And you know, you got to remember, I just spent basically my life savings, borrowed money from my parents, sold my boat, and all this kind of thing. And all that money was actually sitting right there in front of me, going crunch, crunch, crunch inside this roller. We open this roller up, and it's in pieces. It's disintegrated. And we've got our pitch the next day. And I thought to myself, well, I can't. It was a blur. I can't actually remember what I was thinking to myself, but I'm sure it wasn't anything positive. And
I can feel for you.
Long story short, we still had the meeting with the mining company. There's nothing else we could do except have the meeting and say to them, look, we did have a prototype. It was with us yesterday. It's actually destroyed itself. But here's a nice video of it working with, you know, something we filmed earlier. And, you know, I think they're a company that just understood the problem was a big problem. This would be really great for their business if they could incorporate this kind of technology. They learned more about us, learned more about Paul's capabilities as an electronics designer, the team behind him, all that kind of stuff. And we still managed to get them across the line. And they signed up as being our first customer in terms of a trial partner and a development partner. And they really helped us go ahead and develop that technology further with access to their factory and understanding how rollers get made, because this product had to be something that could go to their factory and be inserted into their products in a production line environment. And you know, fast forward, we because I'd run out of money and we'd spend it all on this prototype, which nobody ever actually saw work, we needed to raise capital. And we went to investors, and we took that partnership with that conveyor company, and we leveraged that partnership and raised $500,000 with angel investors. And that was back in 2014. And then obviously then we really got serious about R&D. We accelerated our R&D efforts. We built a little team around it. You know, we really took things to the next level. Government grants helped as well to leverage the capital raising. And then I'm sitting here today, and we've done 2 more raises since, for a total of almost 4 million Australian dollars.
Yep.
And actually have a commercial product now that works and is integrated with multiple roller manufacturing products and actually deployed in conveyor systems in various places around the world. So, yeah.
And you've been traveling the world earlier. You've been to the States and China, and did you get to South America, to the big mines down there?
Yeah, so just before we went live on this, I was actually telling you the story about how we were in the States in March at a show with 2 conveyor companies, probably the US's largest conveyor manufacturing companies, and they were both launching their range of smart roller products using our technology within their products. And we were supposed to get down to, a pretty major deal for us, and it was all off the back of a really big project that was going to happen in Texas in the oil sands. It was a frac sand operation, and it was going to be our biggest project ever, probably worth about 5 million Australian dollars to us, and it was going to be, you know, really take the company to a whole new level of maturity and change things for us.
Yeah.
And then during that, and the reason why we were working with these companies is because we were specified into the conveyor design. So the buyer of the conveyor system and the company building it mandated Vayeron technology. And these conveyor companies that we were launching our product with were tendering. So we were like the hottest girl in town, and they were taking us out to dinner. So So yeah. So look, I mean,
great selling to the end customer, by the way. And we'll talk about influencing end projects and quotes and tenders and things like that shortly.
Yeah. So just to wrap up the journey, I mean, and to answer your question as well, off the back of that trip, we were supposed to head down to Brazil. We had just signed a new in-country partner to represent us over there and sort of start commercializing in the Brazilian market. And unfortunately, we had to call it all short and go home early because of the rise of the COVID-19 situation. So we ended up heading back to Australia. And since then, we've just been working on that relationship with that partner remotely, but have actually sold product and equipment to them since March. And they're actually, in a way, it's a blessing in disguise because it's actually made sure that everybody can operate autonomously without us holding their hands all the way through.
Yep.
So even though I'd like to go to Brazil and spend some time with our partners and get to know the lay of the land, it's been a really good, this whole, lockdown situation has really forced us and our partners to mature in the way that they take our technology without us doing everything for them, sort of thing.
Yep.
And actually, they've been forced to get really familiar with it, which is good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. How big's the team now, Ryan?
We've got a team of 8 people, 10 all up with directors, but eight people that work within the business, and then of the 8, 5 are full time. So
okay. Now you've had a couple of raises. In terms of a business vision, you've got some revenue coming in. Have you got to break it even at this stage? Because there is a lot of costs in R&D.
It's funny. You listen to Tesla news, and 1 month they break even, and then next month they don't. We're a bit like that, so we're up and down still. Yep. We just ran the figures on last year, and we only just scraped through on a break even basis, and we do expect to have those months where we're in the red. But we hope to obviously increase the consistency on where we're in the green. So
that's pretty damn good. I don't know if anybody missed the slight nuances that Ryan was talking about, but his original product didn't have batteries. It was kinetically engineered to harness energy from the movement that was already happening, and they were converting it into very fine sensors. Now, these sensors are picking up small vibrations, aren't they? They're picking up changes of vibration mnemonics and then conveying that through a wireless activity to some sort of wireless hub edge server, which is then going off to galactic headquarters, ringing a bell in the operations shop saying, hey, we've got a wobbly conveyor roller here. We've got a series of them. You predict when they're going to fail to some extent these days, don't you? You've got statistic about how long they can run with a bit of a wobble.
Well, that's right. And the interesting thing about what we've done, well, I think it's interesting anyway, is we're actually leveraging everybody else's powerful platform. So we provide a data aggregation and collection tool, which then feeds into some really powerful analytics packages put out there by some very well-known brand names. So I mean, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel on a lot of that, but what we've done that's pretty cool is be the first to market with a low cost but very powerful condition monitoring tool. And I'll just give you a little idea. We were compared with a industry standard condition monitoring vibration analyzer out there, which costs about $35,000 to purchase and use, and it's used by condition monitoring technicians to find defects within bearings. And our product, which is only tens of dollars, compared in performance to that product, and we do it in such constrained microprocessing power and radio transmission power. So it's all pretty neat technology.
But it's interesting because you've looked at other industries outside of mining as well, and you found the dynamics somewhat different. I think you were telling me the story. So the other side of Mackay's industry is sugarcane. And, the sugarcane industry isn't all that profitable. They're very old operations, and there's nowhere in their budgets and mechanisms do they have this sort of budget for for this sort of tech.
Well, that's right. And, we don't really want to be a one-product company. We really see Vayeron as being an industrial technology business playing in multiple verticals. And we do have a new product coming out, which is a wireless, what we believe to be, I'd have to do more research, but we believe it to be the world's first wireless intrinsically safe inclinometer for tilt meter sensing applications. And we've identified a whole raft of applications on like wind turbine monitoring and making sure, that you can put these tilt meters around the wind turbine masts and monitor for structural integrity and all sorts of things like that. So, we ultimately see ourselves in leveraging the expertise we built up over the last 5 years in product development, but primarily low-cost, innovative condition monitoring technologies, and actually applying a lot of that learning and underlying technology in other applications. And train axle monitoring is one of them, wind turbine, gearbox, all that kind of stuff. So it's really exciting what actually can be solved with this kind of technology.
We might have to hook you in with some of the other Business and Bare Feet clients. I just had a couple of hours on the phone to Melbourne, Australia today, one of our clients down there, and they do, they assist the staff at Luxembourg's largest wind farm with all these wind farms.
Yeah, I'd love to have a chat.
This particular client has smartphone-based materials for the staff, not of the equipment. But this Luxembourg company had reached out all around the world and found what they wanted in Australia. A couple of weeks ago, we interviewed Sebastian Sarone, who, I don't know whether you actually met him. He was about 1,000 kilometres south of you in Bundaberg for a while, originally from Argentina. He's just done a whole lot of environmental monitoring of their equipment in the Baltic Sea with gale force and high humidity and all sorts of agricultural and industrial activities. So I think we're going to have to get some of our interviewees together to Jono to start talking amongst themselves about how they can leverage each other's networks. Yeah.
Look, I mean, that's the beauty of this, right? We've got people from all over the world doing all sorts of cool stuff, but it's surprising how many people we're connecting with that maybe, they can connect with each other and actually do some really cool business together.
And then there was Paul Gibbs, who just left the Atacama Desert in Chile, which happens to be one of the biggest mining centres in the world as well.
Yeah.
Paul flies hot air balloons. He's not involved in mining, but he's got a lot of connections. That here he is normally based up in the desert. He had this COVID escape recently with his family and dogs. So.
We spoke to him. He was our first quarantine person.
Yeah, we spoke to him in quarantine.
Oh, so you've talked to a few, I can imagine then?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the first live interview from a hotel room in Sydney or wherever it was. It was in Melbourne.
Well, was he at the Tom Hanks Castaway stage where he's talking to volleyballs and stuff yet?
He mentioned Wilson a few times, but no. So look, one of the things I'm interested in from a marketing background is, you've talked about obviously pivoting the product, but talk me through. Okay, so as you started to unpack this, and you can assume as you're going to market that the people are a certain kind of people and they're going to respond a certain kind of way. And this is something we discovered last week with the Map My Apple guys, is that as they started to talk to the market was completely different to who they thought they were, even though it was the same market, but the way they behaved, the way they responded, how they interacted. So talk through that. So what did you discover in your market? What were some of the mistakes you made early on, and how did you kind of pivot your marketing and connect to obviously get in the door?
Yeah, and look, for us, there was a huge learning we made things hard for ourselves, because we basically have two customers. We've got the end user of the product who needs to be educated about our technology and what it does for their operations. And then we've got essentially the distribution partner or the channel partner, which is the conveyor manufacturers who embed our product within theirs and then finally deliver it to the end users. Now, that creates some interesting dynamics, because what we created like a push-pull strategy where we'd go and educate these end users about the value proposition. and have them almost demand it from their suppliers, the conveyor companies who they buy their conveyor rollers off. And you know, that's got its own set of dynamics and challenges, is promoting to the mining companies and those end users. And then interestingly, we thought that conveyor roller manufacturers would, especially based on our first experience with that first company in Western Australia, they would just grab the technology. It's a highly commoditized market. They want to differentiate, put it in their rollers, and you know, they suddenly now got something special. And usually that was the first reaction, was that kind of reaction. But then the question was, we want you exclusively, because what is the point if all our competitors can have your technology as well? And we knew we could never go exclusive with any one conveyor manufacturer, because then they become our market and our growth is completely constrained to how far they take us.
Yep.
So we had to, and at times it got tempting, but we had to say no to exclusivity. And I could almost plot this on a chart for you, and I don't know what we would name that graph, but that curve. But there was the enthusiastic acceptance, or at least the foot in the door meetings that we would get with them would be completely enthusiastic, and everybody was going to dominate the world, and we were going to go off hand in hand together. Then there was the moment they realized that they couldn't be exclusive and use us to themselves. And then there was a period of like, they just gave us the cold shoulder. We would drop right off their radar, and they just wouldn't want to know us. And there'd be this trough and this valley of despair while we're dealing with these conveyor manufacturers. But then what we would do is we'd go and knock on the door of their competitor. And while their competitor was up here, really keen and excited and motivated, these guys would be looking over here going, oh, maybe we should actually be talking to Vayeron, because and you've got to keep in mind, it's a highly commoditized market where everyone struggles to stand out. So the moment you get these large incumbent roller manufacturers that almost like feel like they're too big to fail type thing in terms of their market share, all you do is offer our technology to their the underdogs in the market who want to use our technology to stand out and win some market share away from the incumbents. But then it gets to a certain point where the big guys are like getting annoyed with that, so then they're back on board and now they're working with us. And then before you know it, you've also been pressing away and promoting to the end users, and you've got some pull through coming from them, and some, like, we've been lucky enough to be specified.
This is almost like this is a story in itself, right? You read all those books about,
strategic selling, and
that Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix. It's like, but they didn't, and look what happened to Blockbuster. And it's funny actually. I wish May King was maybe May King on this. There's this whole fear of missing out. And
and I think that's largely what we've played on. Maybe not intentionally. I think definitely not intentionally.
Yeah, it sounds like it's an unintentional journey. So that's really interesting. Yeah,
that's definitely right. And look, I've never considered myself to be in this whole startup world. I'm just an engineer trying to solve a problem, really. But yeah. So. But
welcome to the Australian pitch for non-Australians. That's the pitch from Australians. I'm just a simple engineer.
Don't mind me. I'm a sheep farmer. Yeah.
Yeah. Watch out for Australian entrepreneurs, guys.
Yeah, but look, at the end of the day, what's actually happened is we've been lucky enough for the end users to actually really get the value proposition and specify us into a couple of high-profile. In Australia, we got one client that's building a brand new mine. It's quite a high-profile mine, and we've been specified into that, and because of that, and we're listed in the tender pack by brand and by company, and so that raises our profile, and people start really looking at you and going, all right, well, Vayeron definitely seems like it's going to, we're in a part of the future for these mining companies. We better work with them. So what we're seeing now is we're basically integrated with all the world's leading conveyor roller manufacturers, and through them we can access almost any bulk material handling operation on the planet. So,
yeah. Wow. So you're now talking grains, you're talking food, you're talking minerals, you're talking fertilizers.
Anyway, there's a roller, really.
Yeah, basically, and we've got one of those partners we were launching with in the States. They're really big in unit handling. So unverified, but they claim to have 80% market share with the likes of FedEx and UPS and Amazon and all those companies.
Wow.
So, and they actually see a bigger value proposition for the technology in that kind of market. And that's not, I'm not familiar with it. So it would have just gone straight over my head and we would have just never had any exposure, but they're going to take us into that area. So it's really exciting stuff.
Yeah,
amazing. Mate.
So unwittingly, you've sort of you've picked up a strategy of addressing the early adopters, the middle guys, the medium-sized players that want to be a major player. They're looking for that edge. They've got a bit more energy and a bit more fight in them, and they want to try a bit harder. And this is their way to get onto the top. And it drags through the mainstream, often much more conservative market.
In the mining manufacturing world, they'd call those agile.
Yeah.
No, seriously. I mean, this is where, and so it inadvertently creates a world for the laggers to say, oh, I got to get on board too. And
and look, one thing which we've done, and it wasn't by design either. None of this is actually by design except for the product. But we've one thing.
Not that we're telling anyone other than the whole of Facebook your strategy right now, but
no. It's the accidental millionaire strategy.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know. Look.
Yeah, I just woke up one day, but I lost my train of thought there, but I guess the one thing which we've done, which has been really fortunate, is the fact that from the moment we decided we were going to build this product, I started selling it, and it didn't exist, but because this industry is typically notoriously a slow adopting industry, you got to be knocking on your doors and doing the sell and educating the market and telling them what's coming. Or in some cases what we have, even though we didn't have it really at that point in time. But you got to be doing that. And then in parallel, we were scrambling to develop the damn technology, So, and just it's seeming like it's converging where, the market's now wise to it and wants it at the same time that we're coming out of that really intensive R&D cycle. So,
That's fascinating, because it was actually a conversation that we had this week in the live mentoring moment where we talked about market research, and in the blog this week we talked about market research being marketing and marketing being market research. But it's kind of the guys I train with as a coach, his attitude was I say yes obviously to the jobs. I'm not going to sell something that I can't do at all, but I say yes to the job and say, look, we'll deliver it in 6 weeks. And then we have 6 weeks of, oh crap,
Yeah.
And
I completely get that.
Yeah. Well, and it's I see that particularly from a lot of engineering types, because there is that real sense of, we can do this. I mean, paper, it's already working right in your head. It's you can already see the thing spinning and doing what it needs to do and all that.
And not once do you contemplate giving up, because your entire reputation and the fact that you don't want egg on your face, it's all riding on it. So you got to deliver because you've told people you're going to deliver. So
and there's another beautiful piece of that I always say is that the best type of investor is a really good customer.
Exactly.
Funding the early journey. And that sounds like some of your journey is that the clients.
And it's funny because people must be really excited about this company we're building, and we've had customers basically say, how do we get involved? How do we become a shareholder and come along for the ride? And I prefer to say, I'd rather you just buy our product. That would be great. So but you're right. The best type of investor certainly is a customer. I think the moment you've got those customers that are buying your product, it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and momentum builds on momentum, and we're starting to see that especially over the last 6 to 9 months. We're kind of really getting that concept.
So obviously what you're facing now is, okay, so this thing's becoming popular. You're probably so in terms of scaling up now. So what are the big challenges and the big possibilities you see in the journey ahead?
Yeah, so I think and everybody's probably saying this right now, but COVID has really caused like this mental reset, like a rethink on how we do things, because our product is, we're playing in a space where the rollers themselves are highly commoditized, and we've created this little sub market category in amongst it all, where we can, it's not really a commoditized product as such, but it needs to work with the mentality that goes with commoditized products. So it's a high volume, kind of low margin hardware device, and then we make our money on the data and all that sort of thing. But because of that, we need to manufacture it cost effectively. And obviously we did do a market survey here in Australia about who could manufacture this product for us. And unfortunately, we couldn't find anybody that could make it in a way where, you know, basically all our quotes in Australia were above our sell price of the product. So we had to go to China. And we went to China, and we're manufacturing over there. And you know, even our factory over there is actually now invested in our business. So we as a part of IP protection and aligning them, you know, so that we've all got a vested interest in seeing this succeed. So that was important to us. But even so, there's challenges, right? And especially if you can't get on a plane and get over there and send an engineer and solve a production ramp-up challenge, because we're actually creating a product which nobody's manufactured before. So we have to design the manufacturing processes around this. Yeah. So I mean, there's tooling and all that kind of stuff, and you can make sub-components but it's hard to describe without actually showing you. But there's a whole lot of new manufacturing around how we make this product, and with that comes teething and ramp up problems. And to manage that while we're in Australia and that's in China is actually a pretty big challenge. And where we see ourselves actually wanting to go is onshore some of this. And we're working on a strategy at the moment. It's an interesting concept, and I'll bounce it off you guys briefly, because I have to get better at the elevator pitch for it. But what we're looking at doing is, and Mark, you might have already heard whispers, I'm not really sure, but we're looking at doing a cooperative manufacturing facility here in Mackay, which will be a shared facility of companies with similar underlying production and manufacturing needs to share in the overhead of the facility, so that you're amortizing the startup and operating costs of that facility across everybody's production.
That's actually really a thing in the area where I live here, because we're in a slightly higher cost of delivery on American terms. Up in the mountains, transport's a bit more difficult, and there's a few facilities I've been into. I've got one of my mates is actually, he manufactures guns in a metal manufacturing. He's actually so it is actually a thing here. Yeah.
Oh, and that's great to hear. And I wouldn't mind actually offline learning more about the concept, because it's gaining a lot of traction here locally. And we've got council,
makes sense.
Our local city councils involved. And there's a bunch of stakeholders that really see this as being something that's going to add skills and resources and diversify our local economy. For it to work, it needs to be technology products that are exportable. We can't be metal mashing, as they say, and just doing what our local industry does well, but does a lot of. It needs to be a diversification to the thing. So we're in the process of identifying these companies which basically have these underlying needs, and we all share in the overhead, and then you can utilize a factory that's 100% utilized, but you only need it for maybe 10 or 20% of its time. So your unit costs are going to be reduced. And this is an innovative rethink that we've kind of been forced into because of COVID, and it's part of a strategy to sort of bring some capacity and supply away from China and actually manufacture product here locally in our own backyard, where we can actually be at the facility and ramp up to meet the demand we see coming through.
So just to give a little bit of background again for the people around the world that don't quite understand what you're talking about. Now, we're listening to Ryan, who is now an international founder with customers all around the world in about 7 years. His town is about 120,000 people. It's a dirty coal mining, sugar creation town. It's not a technology
I don't know if the
infrastructure.
tourism department would like to hear you say that.
No, well, it's a moderate tourism location, and there is one startup incubator in town where Ryan is the cornerstone tenant for a community-run incubator. He's not like he's got hundreds of international mentors on his doorstep every day. The government's 1,000 kilometres to the south. They're lucky to be able to spell the name of this town. This is not a capital
or
city.
manufacturing for that matter.
And even manufacturing. So what he's describing is how he has driven his team in a very remote part of the world without a relatively strong ecosystem, startup ecosystem, to get to where he is. And he's just reached out and grabbed it around the world. And just the second point, as an example of what you're talking about, there is one of these factories in the food industry up there in Cairns that I've been working with for a couple of years.
Okay.
So this chili manufacturer decided to build a custom-built, highly tech production facility. He said, listen, I only need it for pretty much one day a fortnight. I'm going to open source my factory. I'm going to design it so that all sorts of other food production people can make this happen. I'm also going to encourage all sorts of almost weekend market food producers who've got some great products to ramp up their production. He went and set up distribution arrangements through Southeast Asia. So now you can scale in a rented factory, by the hour, your food production, and they can get it onto ships and planes to distribute right through Southeast Asia.
In food, it's very, very common.
Yes.
It's very common. I mean, there's 2 or 3 packaging and food production plants just in our town that all do that.
So what you're saying, Jonathan, is we're not actually that clever. That this concept is quite a tried and tested one.
Well, I think when it comes to manufacturing in Australia, I think you are very, very clever.
Yes.
Because
we're excited for it, and I think it's going to solve
manufacturing problems over there. Yeah,
that's right, exactly right, and that's what I was about to say. Is this is gonna what it will do is provide, and we see it as being a stepping stone facility, because the ultimate goal is for each one of those companies that is involved in this facility to be able to grow their product demand to a point where it's the facility can't cope with it, and they're forced to then go and build their own. But at that point, you can, right? And what it does is you can feed the funnel with founders coming through with new products who can actually come in on the other side and start manufacturing locally at the facility and prototype production processes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the key. Yeah, that's the key. It's actually getting to the point where you actually have a production facility rolling, right? Because
that's right.
All the cost is in how do you build your moldings? How do you build all your how do you as you talked about, you had to actually engineer a production system to actually make your product. It wasn't like, oh, we could just retrofit that. And
well, what most people don't realize, and I didn't realize, is when you go overseas, and we went to China, you've got your designs and you've got your product, and you think, right, I'll go find a contract manufacturer who will make it for me, and you hand over your things, and then they go, all right, well, this will cost X amount of dollars, and we'll make this per unit for you. Great. You kick them off, then they come back to you and you say, they basically they ask you, how do we make it? And it's like, guys, you're the manufacturer. Yeah. You're supposed to tell me how to make it. I've just given you the design. But no, they want you to tell them how to do absolutely everything. And all they do is provide the labor and the tools.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah. No, interesting. I wonder whether you'd have a different arrangement here in Europe, where it's a longer history of engineering production line quantities. Your volumes are higher in Europe, similar to the United States. Whether you'd find people that were a bit more open to that level of innovation in the manufacturing.
It is interesting, and I have heard that the clustering concept is quite popular in Europe. Yes. And this is a form of clustering, I guess. So.
I've mentioned a few times on these chats a fellow I met pre-COVID, about 6 months ago, we were crossing a ferry across Swiss lakes, and there was this beautiful Aston Martin park next to us. Went and spoke to the you do, and he said, "Oh, you're Australian." He recognised the accent. I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, I bought this Aston Martin because of Australia." I said, "Oh, okay. What's your business?" "Oh, I make trucks. In fact, I don't truck. I just make the trailer." And so I made all these trailers here in Switzerland and shipped them to Australia, your big Coles and Woolworths food distribution. We became the largest truck. And I said, hold on, you made trailers for trucks here in Switzerland, took it to a coast, put them on a ship, shipped them all the way to the other side of the world to Australian customers. What Australian manufacturers could do the same. I said, yeah, it was actually really quite easy. So we undercut the quality product, and now I drive an Aston Martin. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, and it's in a way, I mean, good for him, but in a way, it's a shame because we should be able to do that here locally.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why Mark shares that story. I mean, it is such a shame, and really, there's no excuse for Australian manufacturing. A, we've got the ability. B, we can highly automate. C, we've got a very, very smart workforce, very agile workforce, and so when we do produce stuff in Australia, it's very, very good. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. We really need to probably start thinking about wrapping this up. But this has been fascinating because I don't think we've really talked to anyone about that whole production system and how you manage that and how you manage that. Excuse me, I've got chickens in one corner. I've got a mockingbird over my shoulder. It's like everything's decided to be noisy this morning.
Sounds tranquil, to be honest. Yeah. It sounds really
well,
nice.
yeah. I mean, we're up in the mountains. But, it is beautiful here, but so it's been fascinating to hear that journey. How you've had to adapt not only just in terms of how you understood your customer, but how you understood the whole manufacturing process. Dealing with foreign markets or dealing with China in particular. But and that's going to be an interesting journey going forward in terms of when you look at, I think one of the things that comes out of COVID is countries becoming much more protectionist about, and particularly you're going to see here not necessarily in the US but in North America, there's going to be a real push to onshore manufacturing in North America.
Yeah, and it's really definitely highlighted as a big risk factor for our business. So we need to implement a strategy, and we're working on that. So.
Oh wow,
that's fascinating. Yeah, it's been a great conversation. We'll end the Facebook Live feed in a minute, but it's been a fantastic conversation. Any parting thoughts for anybody in your shoes that's thinking about doing something that's more of a manufacturing base? Doesn't have to be from Australia, but.
Yeah, look, I really don't know how to say anything that's not a cliche anymore. But I think you really just got to go for it. I mean, and surround yourself with people who complement your skill sets. I mean, I definitely wouldn't have been able to do it if we didn't have the people we've gotten involved in our business. And to be honest, again, not by design. I managed to just luckily haphazardly find my way to these people, but you got to be able to spot them when you do come across them and keep them on your side, because it's definitely the team and the complement of skills in a team that really help take you to the next level.
That's fantastic.
Wonderful.
Well, Ryan, thanks so much for your time tonight, or this morning, or this afternoon. It's like good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, or whatever it is from the Truman Show. But just hang on the line, obviously, when we do end this. But thanks very much, and really appreciate your time. And that's been a fascinating, particularly from manufacturing, which is an area I do a lot of work in strategy, consulting, coaching. It's fascinating to hear. So thank you, mate. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ryan. It's been awesome to get the update, and I'm sure we'll have a bit more private chats to see who we can connect you with in the next couple of weeks anyway.